The Wills, Trusts, and Community Property question from July of 2002 is just about the easiest essay question to appear on the California bar exam in the last 30 years. Now, if it turns out that it was difficult for you, this will be highly instructive. And it's true that this question is a lot easier if you know what you're doing as far as technique goes. Still, this is not a complicated question. It's pretty easy to organize. It tests issues that we have seen before and that are simple. We're dealing with three different subjects at the same time, wills, trusts, and community property, but all of it makes sense, and there's nothing hidden here. Let's take a look at the call of the question. What rights, if any, do Henry, Craig, Molly, Sis, and Larry have to 1. Teresa's half of the community property? Discuss. 2. The life insurance proceeds. Discuss. 3. The painting. Discuss. Answer according to California law. Fair enough. Well, our inclination will be to organize around the call of the question. As it turns out, we will be dealing with testamentary documents, and therefore we will have to have an initial section that deals with the validity of those documents. Well, I say this is simple and straightforward. Let's see how true that is. Please join me at the top of the question. We see that Teresa and Henry were married and had a child, Craig. In 1990, Teresa executed a valid will, leaving Harry all of her property, except for a favorite painting, which she left to her sister, Sis. Teresa believed the painting was worth less than $500. Well, why do you think they would tell us that fact? Answer, because the painting is probably worth a great deal more. But this is not a complicated issue. A mistake as to an item's value does not invalidate the gift. So, unless there's something else going on here, or some other fact that turns up, this painting is going to go to Sis. But not so fast. Take a look at paragraph 2. Here, on February 14, 92, Teresa types, dates, and signs a note stating that Harry should get this painting instead of Sis. She never showed the note to anyone, but this note is invalid as of February 14, 92, because it fails as a witnessed testamentary document, and it also fails as a holograph because it is not all in the testator's handwriting. Next, in paragraph 3, we learn of the events of 1994. Here, Teresa handwrote a codicil to the will stating that the note I typed, signed, and dated in 92 is to become a part of my will. The codicil was properly signed and witnessed. All right, well, this codicil in 94 will republish and incorporate by reference the earlier failed holograph. And it's worth noting, and we can tell right now, that this 1994 document would be valid as a holograph even if it wasn't witnessed. It looks as if it means that the requirements for a valid testamentary codicil, witnessed codicil, have been met. In paragraph 4, we learn about the events of 1995. Here, Teresa and Henry have their second child, Molly. Right after that, Henry can't cope with fatherhood. He leaves and joins a commune. But Henry and Teresa never divorce. In paragraph 5, we learn about the events of 99. Here, Teresa falls in love with Larry, and with her separate property, purchases a $200,000 term life insurance policy on her own life, and she names Larry as the sole beneficiary. Well, unless something else happens below in the fact pattern, we can already answer the second question. What happens to the life insurance proceeds? They go to Larry. They were funded with separate property. It looks as if he is a legitimate beneficiary. There's no fraud or other misconduct. Unless something else happens, the life insurance proceeds go to Larry. In 2000, Teresa dies. She is survived by Henry, Craig, Molly, Sis, and Larry. At the time of her death, Teresa's half of the community property was worth $50,000, and the painting was her separate property. When appraised, the painting turned out to be worth $1 million. Then we get the call of the question with regard to these various interested parties and the three-part call of the question. And of course, we apply California law. Well, fair enough. We were sort of inclined to organize the answer around beneficiaries, and ultimately we will do that. But first, we have to establish the validity of the testamentary documents. So, Now, please turn with me to the outline of issues that I've presented, and let's go through the drill. Once again, this is simple stuff. We've done it before in other fact patterns that are more complicated than this. So, let's do it. Look at the outline of issues, and first, I point out that the underlying 1990 will, the original document, is valid. Then we look at the holographic codicil that was typed on February 14, 92. I have a couple of subpoints that allow us to draw our disinterested grader's attention to the fact that we are very mindful of the details. And within our analysis of this codicil, we conclude that at the time it was drafted, it didn't have any impact on the 1990 will. Next, we focus on the 1994 codicil. It's a valid witnessed codicil, and it incorporates by reference the 92 typed codicil. So, our conclusion with regard to which documents are binding is the 1990 will is valid as modified by the 1994 codicil. Then we go into distribution, and here I actually have a separate section for everybody: Henry, Craig, Molly, Sis, and Larry. Then I offer a brief three conclusions that are directly responsive to the call of the question. The community property goes to the husband, the life insurance policy goes to Larry, the painting goes to the husband, because that's what the testamentary documents say should happen. All right, fair enough. Now let's have a look at an answer to this complicated, or maybe not so complicated, fact pattern. But once again, notice how this answer is rigorously and carefully organized, and it allows me to find a home for all of the facts and to present analysis of these facts that is thoroughly grounded in the binding California law. So look at what I write in the very first paragraph. Up front, I lead with the facts. Teresa died in 2000. Her survivors want to get whatever they are entitled to, and that means we have to consider the testamentary documents. We start off with the 1990 will. I handle this in 3 short sentences. It's a valid will. It was executed in 1990. It left Harry her property, except for a painting that went to Sis. Next, we focus on the typed holographic codicil. Here again, I lead with the facts. I point out that the fact she never showed the document to anybody doesn't have any impact on its validity. The problem with this document is that it doesn't succeed as a holograph, and so it has no immediate impact on the earlier will. But as we turn to the 1994 handwritten codicil, we see that this 92 codicil is going to be incorporated into the document. And notice that I lead with the facts. The codicil was written in 94, it's properly signed and witnessed, and it also would qualify as a holograph. So I conclude that it is a valid codicil, that it properly incorporates by reference the otherwise invalid 1992 typed codicil. So I conclude that Teresa's 1990 will is valid as modified by the 1994 codicil. Okay? Fair enough. Now we know what documents govern. Let's apply those documents to consider distribution. First, we start off with Harry. I indicate that the will from 1990 is valid, as modified by the codicil. So, Teresa's expressed intent was that all of her property, including the painting, were to go to Henry. And we're going to carry out these wishes. Notice that the couple was still married at the time of Teresa's death, although they had separated several years earlier. The separation will affect the distribution of the insurance proceeds, but other than that, Henry takes everything. Let's look at Craig. Craig was Teresa and Henry's son, and he was born before the 1990 will was executed. So, Craig is an omitted child, but it will be presumed that Teresa deliberately chose to exclude him. And even if Craig were eligible for protection under the pretermitted child statute, he still wouldn't take his intestate share because his dad is the sole beneficiary of the will. So, Craig doesn't get to take anything. Next, we turn to Molly. The difference between Molly and Craig is that Molly was born after Teresa executed her will, and ordinarily that would entitle her to her intestate share of her mother's estate. But the problem for Molly is Teresa left her entire estate to Molly's dad. And under the pretermitted child statute, it is presumed that the surviving parent will provide for the children of the deceased parent when he or she is the sole beneficiary of the decedent's estate. And so Molly gets nothing, despite the fact that her dad apparently is not able to cope with parenthood. So now we turn to Sis. Sis is the big loser under these facts. The original 1990 will left a nice painting to Sis. Nice in terms of value, if not in terms of artistic quality. Teresa thought the painting was worth only $500, but it turns out to be worth $1 million. Well, that error has nothing to do with distribution. The problem that Sis has is the 1994 codicil incorporated by reference the earlier 92 document into the will. And that means Henry, or Harry, it's hard to keep these husbands separate, H's husband. Here it is Henry. Henry gets the $1 million painting, and Sis gets the hose. She gets nothing. And Teresa's mistake about the value of the painting doesn't change the result of the gift. So now we turn to Larry. I find a home for the facts about their romance, and I indicate that Teresa's use of her own separate property is her business. And after the separation, everything she earns is her separate property. So Henry doesn't have any interest in the insurance policy for a couple of reasons. First, he's not a named beneficiary, and secondly, Teresa can spend her separate property any way she wants, especially after they're separated. So the insurance policy proceeds go to Larry. They aren't a part of the estate, and Larry takes the $200,000 life insurance benefit. Then I state simple conclusions that are a direct reply to the call of the question. The $50,000 community property goes to Henry. The life insurance proceeds go to Larry. The painting goes to Henry. And that wraps up a consideration of what I think is the easiest fact pattern to appear on the California bar in many, many years. And if you didn't find it to be so easy, I trust you will have found your work on this question and my review of it to be helpful.